You and I need to talk.
I think The Legend of Korra is full of brilliant ideas, however many of them hampered, particularly in the first season, by rushed pacing, crammed into 12 episodes where I think the season probably deserved an extra 2 or 3 to give the more important emotional beats more space to land. That said, there are still definitely a lot of emotional beats that do land, one of which is expressed wonderfully through the action of a fight scene, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Possibly my favourite scene from the first season, Korra's showdown with Tarrlok and all the emotion behind it, which has been the plan of Antoine Bandele to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of The Legend of Korra with a playlist of videos each analysing a different legendary scene from the show. Much like the One Marvelous Scene project about Marvel films a few years back, I think this is a wonderful idea, one I was very eager to be part of. But let's get into the scene I'm discussing, shall we? The scene comes from episode 8 of season 1, titled, very aptly, When Extremes Meet. We have Tarrlok, a member of the Republic City Council who set up a task force to deal with the radical group called the Equalists. He originally manipulated Korra into joining, and she was kind of under his wing, his control, in opposition to Tenzin's guidance, until she came to realise just how much a manipulator Tarrlok really was. Something I think that is reenacted in the second season on a much larger scale when Korra is brought under Unalaq's wing as a kind of father figure who claims to value her ability, using this influence to manipulate her for his own ends in a very similar way. I like how that happens, you know, a similar experience happening again but with a more intense personal connection second time round. And we're going to touch on some of the earlier moments in this episode before we get to the actual scene, because I think they're crucial to understand exactly what impact the showdown with Tarrlok really has. The episode begins after Mako, Bolin and Sami come to the Air Temple Island, with Saikon being made Chief Beifong's replacement as Chief of the Police and pledging all his police forces under control of Tarrlok and his task force because
there is one man who has been effective against Amon's revolution. Councilman Tarrlok.
I think in times with threats like Amon poses to the city, people's general fear makes it very easy to desire action. Uncertainty is a difficult emotion to have to sit with, and I think angered at how afraid Amon has made people feel, of course they desire some clear-cut, quick revenge against him. Give Tarrlok full power of the police force to do whatever is necessary in his extreme way. His actions may not prove the best ones, but action does spare us having to dwell on our fears. Tarrlok is a man of action. I think that is important here. And the fact he's exploiting the public's fear in order to gain power for himself, possibly also bribing or blackmailing Chief Saikon.
Tarrlok, I don't know what you did to get Chief Saikon in your pocket, but I highly doubt it was legal.
Following this speech, Tarrlok asks Korra to rejoin his task force. She refuses and tells him,
Tenzin's been right about you all along. You played me, you played Beifong, and now you're playing the new chief, too. Well, I got news for you. You need me, but I don't need you. I'm the Avatar.
Which is typical of Korra in this first season, knowing she's the Avatar, having spent much of her time growing up with the White Lotus, comfortably mastering the first 3 elements. I think she has something of the arrogance of youth. I am the Avatar, I can exert my power to achieve good. And she is technically right. Tarrlok needs her great skill, but also the influence it would have on the public to see the Avatar endorsing his task force. Only Tarrlok can play a smarter game. His reply suggests differently.
You are not, in fact, the Avatar. You are merely a half-baked Avatar in training. Which reminds me, how is your airbending going? Made any significant progress with that?
Tarrlok shoots straight to her insecurities, and you see in Korra's expression how much of a sting this remark has, and you remember sometimes the arrogance of youth, the swagger, the eagerness to show strength can often have less to do with real confidence than a mask to hide insecurities. The need to kind of prove to herself that she is as strong as she hopes to be. Korra would like to feel like an all-powerful Avatar, but when she's yet to make any real progress with her airbending, being the Avatar becomes more a painful pressure she feels she's failing to live up to. Korra has instead always felt more confident when she is able to exert some sort of power or strength. Like when she can turn up in Republic City on her first day and beat up some criminals, for example. It makes her feel good, strong, like she's achieving something, only things aren't often as simple as that.
What do you mean I'm under arrest?
Tarrlok cuts deep to her insecurities though, and that stays with her. That will also prove important.
If you will not be part of my task force, then you had best stay out of my way.
Tarrlok says, as he would say, I control you, or keep you away, or crush you. I think that's his attitude towards most things. Korra then, feeling down about how little progress she is making, seeks advice from Tenzin, who tells her to be patient and
To work through this airbending block.
seeking her connection to past avatars to help her. The thing is, Korra isn't great with being patient. I've already said the allure of action. Korra in particular feels better in herself when she does get to exert some strength, so when trying to connect to her past avatars proves difficult and uncertain and kind of scary, she naturally turns to action and to her friends, who do show her support. They are definitely a positive influence that show her she's not alone.
The arena might be shut down, but we're still a team! The new Team Avatar!
Nonetheless, they lead her in a direction of not trying to work through the block, but of instead taking action. What does that mean in this situation? They get their own Batmobile and drive around the city with a police radio looking for trouble they can weigh in on, which can obviously be a positive thing. They arrest some equalists that Tarrlok's task force were too late to have possibly caught. But what's really going on here, you know? Is this about Korra trying to do good, or about making herself feel better? Maybe I haven't mastered airbending, but at least I can arrest equalists. And more than that, isn't Korra pretty much forming her own task force that very publicly shows up Tarrlok's task force, undermining them, and then she gloats in his face about it?
That's funny. I didn't see your little task force or the cops the whole time.
Is this about doing good or about showing up Tarrlok? Getting revenge? You jabbed at my insecurities and made me feel weak and ineffective. Now I'm going to undermine your task force and make you feel weak and ineffective. I guess the problem with very publicly undermining someone in political power is that you have to make sure you're going to win the dispute, because they're unlikely to back down on something that's a threat to their status. What does Tarrlok do in response to this? He wins the power to make membership of the Equalists illegal and to impose curfew on all non-benders. He shuts off their supply of power, accuses anyone who protests as being an Equalist, and arrests all of them, done very publicly in front of Korra. So when Korra tries to stop him, he ends up arresting her friends for obstructing the police. He does it impulsively in a moment of anger because Korra has been pushing him, and now she too responds impulsively in a moment of anger. So this is technically a small petty feud that has spiraled out of control. A man who doesn't like his power to be undermined, and a woman who doesn't like her ability as the Avatar to be questioned. Her instinct is to exert power, to threaten Tarrlok into letting them go, but thankfully her friends are able to talk her down.
Korra, listen to him. It's not worth it.
Because sometimes action isn't the best way. Rather than just fight and make threats, she can instead call Tenzin, and his influence as a councilman might be able to help. After Tarrlok has his chance to gloat, that is.
So sad to see your little Team Avatar broken up.
Shall we get to the actual scene now, though? It's taken me longer than I thought, because Tenzin can't persuade Chief Saikon to release her friends or the innocent people arrested, but he will have a council meeting with Tarrlok in the morning. He tells Korra she has to be patient. If she can wait until then, everything will be sorted out. Only she can't wait. Let's get into it. We see her quite clearly struggling to sleep because she's too angry about Tarrlok's slight. She can't take the waiting, nor possibly the wounds to her pride, so she acts impulsively again. Storm out into the snowy night to burst through Tarrlok's office window, which seems unnecessary by the way. Just for the sake of her entrance being a bit more dramatic and intimidating, using the door would have been fine. But I quite like how Tarrlok has a wall of water decorated behind him and a stone slab, which, I don't know, might be a symbol of his councilman status, where Korra is instead framed with the icy air of this open window. Tarrlok's element of water, and Korra with the element she's failing to master.
You and I need to talk.
Where Korra is threatening, Tarrlok is composed. He checks no one else is in the building before telling his assistant to go home. He doesn't feel threatened. He expected and probably wanted her to burst in impulsively like this. Since he has the leverage, if he can get her here, he can hopefully use it to manipulate her again. Whereas Korra, with the icy, stormy wind behind her, has none of this composure.
You're doing exactly what Amon says is wrong with benders. You're using your power to oppress and intimidate people.
Which is obviously true, you know. We later learn there are reasons Tarrlok and Amon are made to seem like two sides of the same coin. One who represents his father's dream to control Public City, the other who represents a rebellion against that dream. Albeit a rebellion that ultimately amounts to the same thing. Neither entirely are able to escape the shadow of their father. Korra feels very sure of her beliefs. She is doing good, Tarrlok is not. Therefore, by expressing how she is right and he is in the wrong, she'll be able to change his mind and he'll realise that she's right. Perhaps though she's so eager to be right that she ends up being blinded to her own pitfalls. The point is, she doesn't anticipate Tarrlok having any response to her.
And you don't?
Of course not.
That slight hesitation in her voice is great to convey that she hasn't even considered or questioned her own motives before. She doesn't know.
Isn't that what you came here to do? Intimidate me into releasing your friends?
To which Korra is speechless, and we're getting increasingly close-up shots of Tarrlok and Korra to build this sense of the showdown developing, even changing the side shots to make them seem more clearly opposed.
That's what I admire about you, Korra. Your willingness to go to extremes in order to get what you want. It is a quality we both share.
And he's spot on, really. That's pretty much what she's been doing this whole season so far. They tend to say the best villains force heroes to confront sides of themselves that they don't like, and Tarrlok does exactly that. His goals and motives are entirely different to Korra, but his methods exactly the same. In fact, the other thing people say is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. How does she know her own habits of exerting power and dominating her enemies won't lead to bad results? Ultimately, she can muster no real argument in response to Tarrlok.
You and I are nothing alike.
Look, I'll make you a deal.
His hands now open and he moves from kind of countering Korra's verbal offense to now taking the initiative.
You fall in line and do what I say, and I'll release your friends.
To which Korra gives a flat no. I don't know if in this moment there would have been a third way to handle the situation, something with a bit more wit and cunning, but if there was a third way, Korra is most certainly not the type of person to find it. Her refusal prompts Tarrlok to rise to his feet and turn his back to her, a classic villain move before a fight. Although as it has been throughout, it's really Korra's pressing that sets him off.
You need to be stopped. You're just as bad as Amon.
The comment here has stung him just the way he stung Korra by calling her a half-baked avatar.
Tried to work with you, Korra, but you've made it impossible.
The fight now begins. This first shot comes so sudden that Korra can barely dodge it, emphasised by the slow motion cutting through her hair. She responds aggressively with fire, but Tarrlok is a waterbender with a wall of water behind him. He throws ice, again employing the slow motion really well here. You know, I tend to hate the cliche of using slow motion in fights to make moments look cooler, but it's very effective here because there's an emotional point to it, to make Korra getting hit look twice as painful. On first viewing, it made me feel like she was going to lose here. She responds sensibly with a wall of earth before then attacking him from behind, bringing down this possible symbol of his authority that takes him by surprise. The effectiveness is really that it takes him away from the water into an open space where he is surrounded only by earth and therefore defenseless as a waterbender. More importantly though, we get a reversal of that classic bit in fight scenes where the hero is hanging onto the edge of a cliff or something and the villain stands over them, all imposing, making taunts, because here it's Korra taking that villain's role.
Still think I'm a half-baked avatar?
You know, the fight should be over here. Tarrlok attacks Korra and she's been defending herself. She has taken him away from water now, therefore she's free to retreat. What more is there to gain by still fighting, you know? Try to threaten and hurt Tarrlok to the point he agrees to her demands, or is this just personal satisfaction now? She advances to the point we half empathise for Tarrlok, the clear terror in his face, the force, the anger with each of Korra's hits, the heavy breathing seems as much from rage as exhaustion.
What are you gonna do now? You're all out of water, pal.
Korra is a bully here. isn't pleasant. She advances close on Tarrlok with fire in each hand. What is she planning to do here? Kill him? Scar his face, just as a certain Ozai once scarred a certain Zuko? Just as Amon claims to have been scarred by the Firebenders? That doesn't seem the best idea. The more you make someone feel cornered, the more they're likely to respond with aggression. Korra, very much by her own impulsive, anger-driven actions, gives Tarrlok no choice but to reveal his ability to bloodbend. It's the only way he can stop her now. And also knowing he can't let anyone else discover that he can bloodbend, he has no choice but to either kill Korra for her silence or keep her as a captive. He ties her up and takes her away in a van to somewhere no one will ever find her. Korra then explicitly serves to make everything worse through her action here. Her wounded pride and personal frustration at Tarrlok leads her to ignore Tenzin's advice, seek petty rebellion, impulsively make demands, and then physically bully an enemy to the point of increasingly extreme reactions. The episode is a lesson in how fighting fire with fire, though often the most satisfying thing to do, isn't always the smartest. Patience can be unbearable, but sometimes it is necessary. And it also makes me wonder just how many unnecessary battles and disputes there are in the world as a direct result of people's ego. The following episode leaves Korra imprisoned in a box she can't escape. Finally, in that space, she is forced to meditate and connect to her past lives. Although that is actually an emotional beat I do feel is rushed. But in terms of this episode and the satisfying cliffhanger it ends on, which is a satisfying cliffhanger they so rarely are, we have a fantastic, brilliant, legendary scene well worthy of analysis. I hope you got something from this. Give it a like if you did, comment your thoughts, good or bad, things I've missed, things I've got wrong. Subscribe if you want more. Check out my other videos on Avatar, I'm sure there's more that will come. Check out other videos others have made on legendary scenes from the Legend of Korra. Otherwise, I guess just hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Janice McMahon, Luke Hoare, Chichu Kaber, Michael Gallagher, In Squares, Dustin Paulson, Samara Salsi, Sharkoff214, Joshua C. Follier and Chad Bramwell. Thank you.